Ground proximity warning systems provide silent monitoring of flight profiles, increased situational awareness, and timely alerts and warnings of impending controlled flight into terrain. The introduction and use of Gpws over the past 20 years has made a dramatic impact in the reduction of CFIT accidents worldwide. But the goal is to eliminate controlled flight into terrain by constantly improving Gpws capability. To meet this challenge, Allied Signal now introduces a new level of technology, a new generation of ground proximity warning systems, the Enhanced Ground Proximity Warning System. Using today's state-of-the-art Mark V Gpws as a baseline, the Enhanced Gpws incorporates a worldwide terrain database, a runway database, and aircraft position supplied by GPS or flight management systems already on board your aircraft. Together, these enhancements provide substantial new capability in Allied Signal ground proximity warning systems to reduce the possibility of controlled flight into terrain. Two new features of the Enhanced Gpws are the Terrain Clearance Floor and the Terrain Display System.
The Terrain Clearance Floor is designed to alert pilots to a possible premature descent during non-precision approaches. Using runway position data, a protective floor is constructed by Enhanced Gpws around the airport. The terrain clearance floor begins roughly 1/2 mile from the runway ends and climbs with respect to terrain at approximately 100 feet per mile until reaching 500 feet above ground level, some 5 nautical miles from the airport. The floor maintains this 500-foot relationship with terrain until reaching 12 nautical miles from the airport. The terrain clearance floor increases again at 100 feet per mile until reaching 800 feet above ground level at 15 miles from the airport. The 800-foot floor is then maintained to a distance of 25 nautical miles from the airport. This construction provides alerts during long, low approaches while avoiding any unwanted alerts along a normal 3-degree descent flight path. As an aircraft approaches the airport, it now has protection from premature descents into terrain or the possibility of landing short of the runway. This function is always enabled, regardless of aircraft configuration, around every airport with hard-surfaced runways of 3,500 feet or longer. Should the aircraft penetrate the terrain clearance floor at any point, the Gpws red warning lamp would illuminate, and the voice alert "Too low terrain" would be heard.
Too low terrain. Too low terrain.
For specific airports with unusual terrain factors, the terrain clearance floor dimensions or gradient can be modified to provide increased safety margins.
Perhaps the biggest step toward the elimination of controlled flight into terrain is being made with the Enhanced Gpws terrain display. For the first time in commercial aviation, pilots can now have a virtual look-ahead display in the cockpit to show any potential threatening terrain. Using a worldwide terrain database, aircraft altitude, and position information, Enhanced Gpws displays a plan view of terrain ahead of the aircraft. Terrain can be shown on existing EFIS map displays or on weather radar displays in non-EFIS aircraft.
Terrain is displayed relative to the aircraft altitude in 3 distinct colors using a dot pattern of varying density. Light density green-colored dots indicate terrain 1,000 to 2,000 feet below the aircraft's current altitude. Medium density green dots indicate terrain at a safe altitude below the aircraft down to 1,000 feet below. Medium density yellow dots indicate terrain from approximately 500 feet below the aircraft's altitude, depending on phase of flight, up to 1,000 feet above the aircraft. High density yellow dots indicate terrain 1,000 to 2,000 feet above the aircraft. And high density red dots indicate terrain 2,000 feet or more above the aircraft's current altitude. As an aircraft approaches significant terrain, Enhanced GPWS looks ahead and provides alerts and warnings to the flight crew. At 1 minute from dangerous terrain, the voice alert "Caution Terrain" is heard twice, and the threat is displayed as a solid, bright yellow color.
Caution terrain. Caution terrain.
This alert will repeat if the threat is still present after 7 seconds.
Caution terrain.
If no action is taken, at 30 seconds the voice warning "Terrain, terrain, pull up" is heard, and the terrain threat is displayed as a solid, bright red color.
Terrain, terrain. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up. Pull up.
In a normal flight profile, as an aircraft climbs to altitude, terrain displayed changes color and becomes less dense in appearance because the relative altitude below the aircraft increases. Eventually, the display becomes blank, as all terrain within range is more than 2,000 feet below the aircraft. Conversely, as an aircraft descends toward an airport, terrain begins to show as light-density green dots when it is within 2,000 feet of the aircraft. As the aircraft gets lower, more and more terrain is displayed with increasing pattern density, and yellow or red colors indicating terrain near and above the aircraft altitude. The distinct colors and patterns give the flight crew a tremendous new situational awareness to instantly determine where terrain is, above or below the aircraft. A full 60 seconds from potential conflict with terrain, the areas that represent a terrain threat change to be displayed as a solid color. A bright yellow area will replace the dot pattern, and the voice alert "Caution Terrain" will be heard twice.
Caution terrain. Caution terrain.
If no corrective action is taken, at the 30-second point, the terrain areas that represent the most immediate threat will turn bright red, and the voice warning "Terrain, terrain, pull up" will be heard.
Terrain, terrain. Pull up. 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 Pull up.
Simplicity and utility for pilots are major advantages of the enhanced GPWS and terrain display. Range capability of the terrain display is pilot selectable from 10 to 320 nautical miles, depending on the specific aircraft EFIS map or weather radar displays. Depending on aircraft type, the pilot will be able to select either the weather radar as shown here or the terrain display as desired throughout a flight. Should the terrain display be deselected when a terrain threat is encountered, the display can be configured to pop up automatically, display the terrain threat, and give the voice alert
Caution terrain. Caution terrain.
The enhanced GPWS terrain display will be fully integrated and prioritized with other alert and warning functions on the aircraft, such as stall warning, predictive wind shear warnings, current GPWS warnings, and TCAS advisories. A capability is also being developed to support presentation and alerting for significant man-made obstacles. This is an important part of enhanced GPWS. An example might be an unusually tall radio tower that penetrates the limits of the terrain clearance floor.
In the next few minutes, you will see two examples of actual incidents where aircraft were within seconds of a disastrous controlled flight into terrain situation. Both incidents have been recreated using Allied Signals flight test aircraft equipped with the enhanced ground proximity warning system.